Good morning, evening, afternoon, or night, whenever you happen to be watching. I'm Lorenzo, and this is episode 9 of KSP to Mars. And contrary to popular belief, this rocket is in fact not heading for Mars. This is the continuation of last episode's biome exploration missile. We have retooled the rocket a little bit, and we are going to try again to land in a fresh biome and do science there. Of course, the continuing mission is also to... Oh no! Look at that. The redesign has put the wrong decoupler first. So there's no more rocket propulsion. A perfectly good booster stage is floating harmlessly in space there. And what I was going to explain was that I spared you the boredom, the hardships of watching a whole launch, so I cut in the episode here. What we're doing is we're exploring biomes, and I'm struggling with the landing vehicle. Yesterday in the last episode, it burned up, or it didn't burn up, but the frontal parachutes, they burned up, and that complicated the landing to such an extent that the experimental bay, the materials bay here, that carried vital data from the upper atmosphere got destroyed. So we got a lot less science than we wanted to. Then, upon rebuilding the rocket, I realized that we are using fairings, so the capsule itself doesn't have to be that aerodynamic. So I can stick a heat shield on top of it, as I did now, and keep everything, or at least the important bits like parachutes, tucked in behind that. So that's what we're trying today. Because of that lost booster stage that's flying over there, we are not in fact going to make it as far as yesterday. We are going to make it up until here, a little bit less because we will be slowing down in the atmosphere. But hopefully that still is the grasslands, allowing us to do a do-over of yesterday, or at least to get this materials bay upper atmosphere data. This has been tried at least 5 times now, and every time the materials bay ends up being destroyed. What we are attempting to do here, this was recovered, great, so we don't need that then. What we're trying to do today is to land this intact, so that we can do ground-based science as well as upper atmosphere-based science. And we have taken Jebediah Kerman, because he will now be riding the shockwave right behind this heat shield. This is an entry profile that's fitting for Jebediah. I think we can all agree about that. So you tuned in just in time, or rather I pressed the recording button just in time to see this exciting entry. We do in fact have enough science from yesterday's episode to get the struts, so after this, no matter what happens, I will attempt to launch the unmanned, science-packed space probe into a proper orbit to get some science from space. Hopefully that can work. If it cannot work, then we will have to see what we do about that. Here comes the heating effects. We have our heat shield pointed into it, but I'm afraid for these goo canisters and of course the landing legs, they are going to get hot, so I'm going to rotate the ship to hopefully distribute the heat. We are still traveling at 2. That did not work. Was that a lag? That was a landing lag, so still no catastrophe. Another landing lag maybe. At least it's not the parachutes. These landing legs are toast, that's for sure. Oh no, I'm tumbling now. No, don't tumble. Tumbling is bad, okay? There's no further explosions. We are at 1100 degrees. Never disengage your safety stability systems while re-entering in a blazing glorious fire. A blazing glorious fire. A glorious blaze of fire or something. Oh no, we did in fact lose the parachutes. So... Oh. Jebediah is still very happy. He has already once reincarnated. I think I'm going to go into the persistent.sfs, the save file, and disable these zombified Kermans so that when they die, they do in fact die. So, what can we do here? Can we get anything from transmitting? We cannot. Keep the data. Let's see. Crew reports here. Can see my house. You can transmit that home. Get at least some sounds. Hey, the antenna survived. That's something. That's wonderful. And can we do a goo experiment here over the highlands? No. Can we do a materials bay experiment here over the highlands? No, not that either. I'm going to keep all the data anyway, so if something miraculously survives the crash, I will be able to recover that. So, spin that around. Maybe something will survive. It's only 126 meters per second. Oh! The capsule appeared to survive for a bit, but then it didn't. So, welcome to KSP to Mars, where for the moment we are certainly not going to Mars. We are having horrendous difficulties even figuring out atmospheric rocketry, let's call it that. Why not? Before I'm going to move on to the space probe, I'm going to add some wings to the biome exploration vehicle, because that might help in stabilizing. And that might help in stabilizing it. Ooh, these wings are super large. Let's go for these ones, also super large. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. No, this looks ridiculous. So, I'm not going to do that. I will see you. I will load up the space flight, the strutted spacefaring robot. Yeah, why not call it that? And I will see you when that's on the launch pad. And here we are on the launch pad with the iRocket 2A. 4 stages. This one first, lots of solid boosters covering a center stack of liquid boosters, then a 7-column liquid booster second stage, a spindly third stage, and finally the fourth stage, which is encapsulated in the fairings and carries the singular science payload of a materials bay. The goal is to get that in orbit and have it radio back its findings. A massive rocket, more to prove we can put useful payload into orbit than to do a lot of useful science. Although, I'm thinking the materials bay from space, I hope that is a lot of science. I hope it is. If this works out, we could use this rocket to just point it up straight, get it into space, and then land it on rockets for recovery. But first we have to find out what's what, and it would be nice to get something into a stable orbit. So without further ado, let's launch it, and here we go. The rocket has been strutted for extra stability, and so far everything is looking good. There is a little bit of wobble here on the solid fuel boosters, and yeah, these do not come apart. I guesstimated that these boosters would run out around at the same time as would the liquid fuel boosters, and I can see now from the progression of the fuel that's in fact not the case. So I hope when these solid boosters run out that the whole stack will still have a thrust to weight ratio higher than 1. If it doesn't, we're going to have to cut the engines and prematurely disengage that first stage, which is of course not a great start to a rocket launch. Now, compared to the stock game, this looks like a much bigger, heavier rocket to put something in orbit, and what we're putting in orbit is positively tiny. So that's a good thing, because it makes things more exciting and harder, and this is not the product of something I just whipped up in one go. It took some iteration and some times right. So we are not accelerating anymore. I am going to bank on, I'm going to guess that we do have enough thrust to not reverse course, and I hope that's true, because otherwise I'm going to look like a massive idiot. I'm going to let these engines run out, and we're slowing down now not because they don't have enough thrust to lift the stack at all, but because they have not enough thrust to counteract the wind resistance, the aerodynamic drag that was being encountered at the speed they were going at. Still not terribly efficient, because a lot of the energy from these boosters is now wasted, but it's still smart to let this burn out rather than to separate it prematurely. Separation is coming up now, definitely though. When they run out, we will move on to our second stage. Boom. No! Why do we still have one engine? That's not good. Cut that engine, separate, initiate these engines. Don't know what happened there. We lost some precious time, and we almost completely came to a stop. In fact, we were dropped about 50 meters, so definitely not the most efficient way to launch a rocket. Look, we're basically just drifting sideways, but still we are launching this rocket that previously could put our Sputnik-esque satellite that's going here, the iRocket 1, into a low orbit without any payload. But we're launching this now from 10 kilometers with some payload. So hopefully, this time we will be able to reach orbit, take this materials bay sample and do some actual real life great science. Well, of course it's not real life science, but in the game Kerbal Space Program, I much prefer to do science in space than to hop around the different biomes. And you can see we are happily using the technology given to us by our previous missions. By having these controllable wings, they help in controlling a lot, and of course the struts that allowed this big rocket to lift off in the first place. So we do now, even if though it's not perfect yet, if this mission does end up to be working, we do have a viable space lifter, a viable orbital lifter. Of course we could get things into space already fairly easily at that, even because just flying straight up and coming back down is orders of magnitude easier than establishing an actual honest-to-God orbit. So the latter is what we're trying today. It's not the easiest task one could imagine, but we are determined to get it done. And if we can get this orbit above 96 kilometers or 104 or whatever it is that the atmosphere is ending at, it will remain there indefinitely, not like our first satellite, the iRocket Mark 1, that will eventually decay and fall back to the surface, because it is not completely out of the atmosphere, but it is out of the atmosphere far enough to complete a few revolutions and prove to the scientists back at home that orbiting is definitely possible, which is always good to know if you're a scientist and you're back at home, I think. Right, so this is going to take a while, and therefore I will accelerate it in post-production. See you at the other side. So, ladies and gentlemen that have enjoyed a bit of musical time acceleration, at least I hope so, I'm pleased to announce we are in orbit, we have fuel to spare, and we brought a useful payload. Look, we have an orbit, the periapsis is 178 kilometers and the apoapsis is 1,000 kilometers. So, not the largest orbit, but definitely an orbit. So, let us have a look at the materials bay. Observe that. And oh dear, we already did the transmission for that, so we have to recover it for any science points, but we can't from here. So plan B is to fire the engine again, raise our orbit as far as we can, and hope that we can get into what counts as high space. So still breaking new grounds and new frontiers. And once we are in orbit now here, this is going relatively quickly, so we are going to expend all the fuel we have in raising our orbit to as high as it will go, and then we can hopefully do another reading there, which will then count as high in space over Kerbin. So we're approaching 8,000 kilometers. Oh my god, the moon is so high, and it says Un. Something is up with that. Well, we'll figure out why it says Un. It appears to have its proper inclination, but it's called Un, and it's at 300,000 meters. Oh god, that's going to be hard to get to, but that's not for today to worry about. For today we are only worrying about time warping to the highest point in our orbit, otherwise known as the apoapsis. So here we are at 8,000 kilometers, and let us look back on the planet, if we can find it. Look, it still looks rather large. It looks about as large as Kerbin does from a few hundred kilometers, yet here we are at almost 9,000. It's not quite over 9,000, but it's definitely near 9,000. So let us observe the materials bay from here. Shit, it's still in space near Kerbin. Damn it. Well, this is never going to go back, so we might as well transmit it for 1% science value of 0.3. Well, that is a definite downer on the would-be success of this mission. That is not something that makes me happy at all. Anyway, we're going to revert to the Space Center, and I have just hatched a new plan. We're going to upgrade this rocket with a goo canister. Use the same rocket otherwise, upgrade it with the goo canister, and shoot it straight up. See what kind of a apoapsis we can achieve that way. If we get to escape velocity, great. I don't think we will though, because I don't think escape velocity is ever lower than orbital velocity. No, that can't be. So we're not going to escape the planet with this rocket, or if we are, I would be very surprised indeed. But what we are going to do is we're going to send these two science instruments on a very high parabolic arc, and use them to hopefully get some new science points that we can transmit home. So a materials-based study and a goo canister study for transmission. I rocket to a 2 in Cyrillic, so that's a nice designation. Off to the launch pad once more. All in the name of science. So I'm hoping to reach what counts as high space, and from there do a transmission of the materials bay and the goo canister. So this mission will be very straightforward. Just point the rocket up, engage the stability system, and fire the rockets. There we go. And this will take a long time. Again, I will fast forward it because there's nothing more I can tell you about rocketry, science, or our pursuit for knowledge. Oh, this is a nice shot. See our whole rocket with a burning column of fire underneath. So I'm going to time forward, accelerate in post-production. This, I can't speak anymore. Time forward it. I'm going to speed it up, so I'll see you there. So, what we see here is that one tiny change to a rocket can completely screw it up. Adding the goo canister to the top, I don't know what it did, maybe it imbalanced the rocket or something, but well, this launch was not quite successful. I'm going to separate everything so we can hopefully see what happened. It does look fairly centered, it's a little bit off balance, but I don't know what's up. I'm going to try this again. So, see you on the launch pad with the... let's see, revert the flight to the vehicle assembly building. That is a big bonus of playing without economic restraint. You can use these buttons without feeling too guilty. Just screwed up the rocket. No matter, try and try again. So, that's definitely good. So, let's have a look. See if we can't put this on exactly straight. Looks good? I think so. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this center engine so that at least this whole stack burns out at the same time and we don't get this weird deceleration problem. I have the controllable fins now, so it shouldn't be a problem to not have a gimbaling center engine. So let us launch this again and see how we get on. I will stay with you until the first stage separation, and when that happens and everything is fine, we will speed up the launch and see how high we get with this launch vehicle. Our first successful orbital lifter with a success rate of 1 in 3, which is hands down the best in the program so far. So here we go, going straight up once more. Stability systems engaged, and they will control these steering flaps and, well, not the gimbaling engines because there aren't any anymore. Ascent is fairly measured at about 1.8 Gs, where we slowly cut through the dense lower atmosphere, and then when this burns out we will slim down the rocket by ditching the stage and moving on to the next stages. We're tilting over a little bit. This is nothing to worry, I don't think, at any rate. I'm going to try and steer it back up to a dead center heading, but as long as we stay within like 10 degrees, as soon as we then clear the what's it called, the lower atmosphere. I've been talking too much today, I don't know what I'm trying to say anymore. As soon as we clear the thick part of the atmosphere, we can then just point it straight up no matter what our heading is and see how high we can get. So the boosters have run out, the liquid fuel engines still have some fuel to burn. If this is now going to go horribly wrong again, I'm going to throttle the solid boosters down a bit so that they burn out at the same time as the liquid engines. Fortunately now, at any rate, the liquid engines will burn out together, so we won't end up with a liter of wasted fuel in the center stack. This stage of the rocket certainly has some room for optimization. I think throttling down the SRBs a bit to match their burn time with the liquid engines will help a great deal with that. Anyway, we're at 9 kilometers now. This stage burns out, and please burn out anyway. We are now falling over, I think because we're just going too slow. So hopefully now that we have a smaller rocket again, we can turn back up. There we are. Hopefully our angle of attack won't become too great. It is very great now, but we're also not moving very fast, so hopefully this is allowed by the gods of aerodynamics. So pointing straight up, activating the stability system, and still this is better than launching from the launch pad with just this. But that first stage definitely needs some tweaking. So I'm predicting that from now on nothing untoward is going to happen, because we are in our tried and proven rocket stage, just pointing straight up, no maneuvers that need doing. We're just going to point, shoot, and see how high we get, so should be easy. Because of that, I will now fast forward until the conclusion. And there we are, after a lengthy burn at 1400 kilometers and traveling upwards at 5 kilometers a second and quickly decelerating because of gravity, that harsh mistress that she is. I haven't looked at the map view to see how high we are going to go. Let's do that now and hope it is very high indeed. Let's have a look here. And it's only 4,000 meters, so that's less even than this rocket made. So, surprise, surprise, it is actually more efficient to go into orbit. I knew that. If I had thought about this plan, I knew that, but I just couldn't believe it. Because this larger rocket shouldn't... It's my intuition, my instincts from the stock game that a rocket this large should easily be able to escape puny Kerbin. But as we have learned for about 9 episodes in a row now, this Kerbin isn't so puny. It's more like Earth and it's difficult to get off of. So let's do the materials bay observation. That does nothing. I'm going to recover that then, as if. And we're going to do the mystery goo observation. And we're going to recover that as well, as if. You can see what will happen if we time warp. Well, not if we time, we are going to... Ooh, that went quickly. Time warping now, and we will rapidly burn up. We've seen this before, and it does not end well for the probe. What I'm going to do next episode is design a sounding rocket that will peak into space and... Everything is going to shit. I'm going to design a sounding rocket that will peak up into space, or we're still not destroyed yet. That will peak up into space, so we are destroyed. That will peak up into space and then attempt to return to the surface to recover that science. So it will carry a lot of heat shields and aerodynamic stabilization, at least I hope that is something I can do. So check back for the next episode where we will attempt something else in the pursuit of science, and I hope you're enjoying to see me fail, because that's most of what we've been doing so far. Thanks for watching, see you next time. I'm Lorenzo, goodbye.